I was forced to sit alone behind a marble pillar at my brother's wedding, close enough to hear laughter, but far enough to be forgotten. That was the moment I realized invisibility isn't accidental, it's assigned. And once assigned, it's enforced with smiles. If you believe quiet people carry the loudest turning points, subscribe, because this story isn't about pity, it's about what happens when erasure finally meets consequence. I didn't choose the seat behind the pillar, it was chosen for me. The usher didn't look apologetic, he didn't look anything at all, just scanned the seating card, frowned slightly, and gestured toward the far right edge of the reception hall. "Here," he said, already turning away. The pillar was thick, white marble, ornamental and unnecessary, purely aesthetic. It blocked half my view of the sweetheart table and nearly all of the dance floor. From my chair, I could see my brother's shoulder when he leaned back and the edge of the cake when the lighting hit it right. Everyone else saw champagne towers, floral arches, and joy. I saw a column. I adjusted my dress, slate blue, modest, chosen specifically so no one could accuse me of trying too hard. That accusation had followed me my entire life anyway. The table was technically a family overflow table. In practice, it was a storage area with linens. No name cards, no introductions, no acknowledgement that I was the bride's new sister-in-law's actual sister-in-law too. I wasn't estranged, I wasn't late, I wasn't difficult. I was simply optional. My mother passed by once, heels clicking sharply, eyes sliding over me like I was part of the decor. She stopped at my cousin's table instead, laughing too loudly at something that wasn't funny. My brother, Aaron, hadn't even looked in my direction since the ceremony ended. Not once. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself weddings were chaotic. I told myself adults don't need validation. But none of that stopped the familiar tightening in my chest, the one that came from knowing exactly why I was here. I was the inconvenient truth of the family narrative. Aaron was the golden child, the planner, the achiever, the one who followed the path exactly as it was laid out. Finance degree, corporate ladder, strategic marriage to a woman whose parents owned 3 vacation properties and spoke exclusively in networking opportunities. I was the deviation. I hadn't failed. That was the problem. Failure would have been easier for them to categorize. Instead, I'd chosen something they couldn't monetize or brag about at dinner parties. I'd built a life slowly, quietly, in a field that didn't come with prestige, at least not the kind they understood. No titles that impressed, no salary they could compare. So they treated me the way people treat things they don't know how to value. They set me behind a pillar. Glasses clinked. The MC announced the first dance. The crowd surged forward, blocking even the sliver of view I had. Applause thundered, then softened into murmurs. I sat still. At some point, I realized no one would notice if I left. The thought didn't hurt the way it once would have. It felt clarifying. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked toward the edge of the hall, not to leave exactly, but to breathe. The balcony doors were open, letting in cool evening air scented with citrus and city rain. I leaned against the railing, watching the city lights blink on one by one. Below, traffic flowed uninterrupted. People were going places, being expected. "Excuse me." The voice was calm, male, unhurried. I turned. He was holding 2 champagne flutes, one extended toward me like this was the most natural interaction in the world. "I noticed you didn't have one," he said. "That felt like a crime at a wedding this expensive." I almost laughed. Almost. "Thank you," I said, taking the glass, "though I suspect there are many other crimes happening here." He smiled, not wide, not rehearsed, curious. "I'm Jonah. Clara." He leaned beside me, not too close, not distant, comfortable, observant. He didn't ask who I knew or how I fit. That alone made him different. We watched the city for a moment. "You look like someone who was put somewhere they weren't meant to be," he said. I snorted before I could stop myself. "Behind a pillar?" "Ah, so I wasn't imagining the architectural hostility. You saw that?" "I notice margins," he said. "People in them, too. That landed harder than it should have." I'm guessing, he continued, that you're family, not friend. Friends don't get hidden. I didn't correct him. Inside, the music swelled. Cheers erupted. Probably the cake cutting. My brother's cake. My brother's spotlight. Jonah tilted his head. Do you want to go back in? I considered lying. I considered deflecting. No, I said finally. Not yet. Good, he said easily, because I don't either. We stood there longer than was socially acceptable, long enough for silence to feel intentional, not awkward. Eventually, he asked, Do you mind if I ask why they put you there? They didn't put me there. They allowed me to be there. He studied me, eyes sharp but kind. That's worse. Yes, I agreed. It is. I expected sympathy. I expected platitudes. What I didn't expect was what he did next. He held out his hand. Come with me, he said. Where? Anywhere that doesn't involve pretending you're fine being erased. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I'd been trained not to take up space without permission. Jonah waited. No pressure, no performance. I took his hand. The contact was steady, grounding, not romantic yet, but intentional. We walked back into the hall together. Heads turned. Not dramatically, not enough to stop conversations, but enough. He didn't let go. Instead of leading me toward his table, he guided us straight toward the center of the room, toward visibility. What are you doing? I whispered. Correcting an error, he murmured. Someone brushed past us. Someone else frowned. I felt eyes on my back, my mother's maybe, or my sister-in-law's. Jonah stopped near a table filled with people I didn't recognize, confident, well-dressed, engaged. This, he said, pulling out a chair for me, is where you sit. One of the women at the table looked up. Jonah, there you are. We were wondering where you disappeared to. I found someone worth disappearing with, he said casually. This is Clara. They smiled at me, genuine, warm. No one asked why I was there. No one questioned my presence. As I sat, I felt something shift, not around me, but inside me. Across the room, I saw my brother finally look my way. Confusion flickered across his face. Then discomfort. Then something like concern. Too late. Jonah leaned in slightly. They're watching. I know, I said. Good, replied he. Let them. And for the first time that day, maybe for the first time in years, I didn't shrink. I lifted my glass, and I smiled back. By the time the speeches started, I had forgotten what it felt like to be hidden. That didn't mean I'd forgotten why I'd been hidden. The memory sat quietly in my chest, not sharp anymore, more like a ledger entry I'd finally balanced. Jonah's table turned out to be the wrong place to feel small. Everyone there spoke with an ease that came from knowing their seat was earned. They asked what I did, not as filler conversation, but as if the answer mattered. When I told them, they didn't nod politely and redirect. They asked follow-ups, real ones. What surprised me most was how little Jonah said about himself. He deflected questions with humor, redirected attention back to others, but people deferred to him without thinking. When he spoke, they listened. When he laughed, the table leaned in. Whatever room he entered, he didn't dominate it, he anchored it. And he hadn't let go of my hand until the first toast began. My sister-in-law, Marissa, stood at the microphone glowing with practiced warmth. She thanked her parents, her bridesmaids, the venue, the florist. She thanked my mother by name. She thanked Aaron's colleagues. She did not thank me. I wasn't surprised. I was curious to see whether it would sting. It didn't, because this time I wasn't watching from behind a pillar. I was seated where the light reached. When the applause faded, Jonah leaned toward me. You're handling this better than most people would. I've had practice, I said. Being overlooked builds endurance. He didn't smile at that. It shouldn't have had to. Across the room, my mother was watching us. Not openly, she was too careful for that, but I caught the glances, the recalculations, the silent question forming behind her eyes. Who is he? The answer, I suspected, would complicate things. Aaron stood next to Marissa now, nodding along as if he were grateful to be included in his own wedding. He looked different than he had earlier, less assured. His eyes flicked toward our table more than once. Eventually, he couldn't help himself. He made his way over during a lull between courses, wine glass in hand, expressions strained into something that approximated brotherly warmth. Clara, he said, as if testing the name. There you are. I was wondering where you'd gone. I held his gaze. I didn't go anywhere. His eyes moved to Jonah. He inclined his head slightly. I see you've met Jonah. Jonah inclined his head. There was history there, I could feel it, not personal, professional. His smile tightened. I didn't realize you'd be attending. I wasn't originally planning to, Jonah said calmly. Plans change. Right. Well, Clara, I hope you're enjoying yourself. I am, I replied, and meant it. He hesitated, clearly wanting to say more, then seemed to remember we were in public. Good, that's good. He left without asking how I ended up at this table, without apologizing for the seating, without acknowledging anything that mattered. Jonah watched him go. He doesn't like uncertainty. No, I said. He prefers control. That explains a lot. What do you mean? Jonah swirled his drink, eyes thoughtful. Let's just say your brother has a reputation for liking clean narratives. Yours doesn't fit. I didn't ask how he knew that. I was starting to understand that Jonah noticed things long before others did. Dinner continued. Courses arrived and disappeared. Laughter swelled and receded like waves. At some point, I realized people from other tables were stopping by ours, asking Jonah questions, asking me questions. Someone asked how Jonah and I knew each other. He answered without missing a beat. We're together. The word landed between us, solid, intentional. I looked at him. He met my gaze, unflinching. Is that okay? He murmured. Yes, I said. It is. Across the room, my mother froze mid-conversation. I almost felt bad. Almost. Later, during the open dancing, Marissa's father clinked his glass for attention. He began a speech about legacy, about ambition, about building something that lasts. It was polished and pointed, aimed squarely at the room full of executives and investors. Then, unexpectedly, he gestured toward Jonah. And I also want to acknowledge someone whose insight has been invaluable to our family's future, Jonah Reyes. Without his guidance, several of our recent ventures wouldn't exist. The room turned. Applause followed, respectful, informed. I felt it ripple outward, that subtle recalibration that happens when people realize they've underestimated someone. Jonah didn't stand, he simply nodded. And it's been brought to my attention that the woman seated beside him is responsible for one of the most quietly impressive initiatives I've seen in years. My breath caught. Clara, he said, reading from a card now, your work has influenced how several organizations, including ours, think about long-term impact. Thank you for that. The applause this time was louder, not explosive, not theatrical, but real. I saw my mother's face change, not joy, not pride, but something closer to alarm. She hadn't known. She hadn't prepared for this version of me. Jonah leaned close. I didn't plan that, he whispered, but I'm glad it happened. So am I. Afterwards, when people came over to congratulate me, my mother finally approached. Her smile was careful. Clara, that was unexpected. I imagine it was. She glanced at Jonah. You must be very important. Jonah smiled politely. I'm useful. She laughed too quickly. Well, it's nice to see you doing something relevant. There it was, the old pattern trying to reclaim authority. I didn't rise to it. I've always done relevant work, I said evenly. You just never asked about it. Her smile faltered. Jonah excused himself, leaving us alone. You could have told us, she said quietly, about all this. You could have listened, I replied, at any point in the last decade. She had no answer for that. The band struck up another song. The moment dissolved. Later that night, when the party thinned and goodbyes began, Aaron cornered me near the exit. You embarrassed me, he said under his breath. I raised an eyebrow. By existing? Because you made this about you. I didn't make anything about me. You just forgot I was allowed to matter. He scoffed. You've changed. Yes, I agreed. I stopped waiting for permission. Outside, the air was cool and clean. Jonah stood by the car, hands in his pockets, watching the lights of the venue dim behind us. You okay? He asked. I think I just outgrew something, I said slowly. Good, there's room ahead. As we drove away, I looked back once. The pillar was invisible from here, so was the girl they'd tried to hide behind it, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep and calm inside me, this was only the beginning. The morning after the wedding didn't arrive with fireworks or revelations. It arrived quietly, sunlight slipping through half-open blinds, the city stretching awake, and a strange absence where self-doubt used to live. That absence was louder than anything. I lay there for a long moment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night not with embarrassment or second-guessing, but with detachment, like reviewing footage after a case is closed. Jonah was already awake. I could tell by the way he moved in the kitchen, unhurried, deliberate, comfortable in a space that wasn't his. That, more than anything, told me he wasn't temporary. "You drink coffee or tolerate it?" he asked, not looking up. "I respect it," I said. "I don't romanticize it." He smiled. "Good answer." We sat at the small table by the window, mugs warming our hands. No rush, no performative intimacy, just presence. "You didn't ask," he said finally. "Ask what?" "Why I stepped in last night." "I considered it." "Because you don't like bullies." "That's part of it." He paused. "Mostly, I don't like inefficiency. Watching someone capable be sidelined is a waste." There it was again. Not flattery, assessment. "I wasn't sidelined accidentally," I said. "It was structural." "I know, which makes it worse." After he left, I didn't spiral the way I might have once. I didn't analyze every word, every look. I went to work. Work had always been the one place where the rules were clear. Effort in, results out. No family politics, no rewriting history. Except now, the calls started coming in before noon. Not congratulations, not curiosity. Proposals. People who'd been at the wedding, people who'd heard about me through someone else, people who suddenly understood my work as valuable because it had been validated publicly. I took the meetings, all of them, not because I needed them, but because I wanted to choose. Within weeks, my calendar filled in a way it never had before. Projects with resources, timelines that respected reality, budgets that didn't assume I'd be grateful for scraps. And woven through all of it was Jonah, not managing, not directing, but positioning me so that no one could pretend I was invisible again. He didn't speak for me. He made sure the room listened when I spoke. The shift didn't go unnoticed by my family. My mother called first, under the guise of checking in. "You seem busy," she said, tone light but edged. "I am." "Well, that's good." Pause. "You'll have to tell me more about what you're doing now." Now, as if it hadn't existed before. "I will, when you ask without qualifying it." Silence. Then colder. "You've become very assertive." "No, I've become consistent." She didn't like that answer. "Aaron tried next, a text, casual, cowardly. Didn't know you were involved in such high-level work. Congrats." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "You didn't know because you didn't look." No emoji, no softening. He never responded. Marissa, to her credit, made an effort. She invited me to lunch, asked questions, listened, but even she couldn't quite mask the discomfort of realizing I'd been miscategorized. People hate discovering they were wrong about someone, not because of the mistake, but because of what it says about their judgment. The real tension surfaced a month later at a private dinner hosted by one of Aaron's largest clients. Jonah was there, I was there, and suddenly so was my relevance. I watched it happen in real time, the way conversations shifted when I entered, the way people recalibrated their tone, the way Aaron stiffened when someone asked me a question before him. At one point, his client turned to Jonah and said, "You've surrounded yourself with impressive people." Jonah glanced at me. "I'm selective." Aaron's jaw tightened. Later, in the hallway outside the dining room, he confronted me. "You enjoy this," he accused, watching me scramble. "I don't think about you at all," I said honestly. "That's what bothers you. You're leveraging him." I laughed once, sharp, unamused. "You think proximity equals manipulation because that's how you operate." He stepped closer. "You're rewriting the family dynamic." "No, I'm opting out of it." He had no answer for that. That night, Jonah and I talked longer than usual, about boundaries, about futures, about what it meant to build something without permission. "I won't protect you from them," he said plainly, "but I won't let them diminish you either." "I don't need protection. I need alignment." He nodded. "Then we're fine." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a relationship, it was a partnership. Months passed, the novelty wore off for everyone but me. For me, it was sustainable. I moved into a larger space, took on a collaborator, declined work that didn't meet my standards. My name started circulating independent of Jonah's, which mattered more than anything else. The family gatherings changed too. I was no longer hidden, but I wasn't centered either, and that was perfect. They couldn't erase me, they couldn't control me, they could only adjust. The final reckoning came quietly, the way all real consequences do. Aaron lost a deal, not because of me, but because he underestimated someone else the same way he'd underestimated me. The client walked, the narrative cracked, and for the first time I saw it clearly. This was never about my success threatening him. It was about my competence exposing the fragility of his position. Jonah found me that evening, sitting by the window, city lights reflected in the glass. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I just realized something." "What?" "I realized they didn't fail me," I said. "They revealed themselves." He smiled. "That's usually how it goes." I rested my head against his shoulder, steady and sure. Behind me, the past closed its door. Ahead of me, there was nothing blocking the view anymore. Power doesn't announce itself when it arrives. It settles in quietly, rearranging the room while no one is paying attention. By the time my family realized the shift was permanent, it was too late to negotiate it back. It started with invitations. Not the obligatory ones, the holidays, the birthdays, the events with photographers and expectations. Those had always existed. What changed were the private ones, dinners without an audience, conversations without witnesses, requests framed as curiosity instead of command. My mother called one afternoon and asked if I'd like to come by for tea. Not needed, not expected. Like. I said no, not out of spite, out of clarity. "I'm busy," I told her, "and I don't rearrange my schedule anymore for things that don't move me forward." There was a pause, then carefully, "You sound different." "I am." She didn't argue. That was new. Aaron avoided me for months after his deal fell through. Not openly, he wasn't capable of that, but strategically. He stopped inviting Jonah and me to events where failure might expose him further. He stopped referencing my work in dismissive tones because others had started referencing it with interest. Silence was the only control he had left, and I let him keep it. Jonah and I didn't rush milestones. We didn't announce anything we didn't need to. The more stable something becomes, the less noise it requires. We built routines instead. Mornings with coffee and mutual respect. Evenings where work talk stayed optional. Weekends that felt like choices, not recovery. When he asked me to move in, it wasn't romanticized. It was practical. "We already live like partners," he said. "Let's stop pretending otherwise." So we did. The first time my mother saw the space, she looked around carefully, as if trying to locate where I'd placed my ambition. "You've done well for yourself," she said. "Yes, I have." She waited for me to soften it. I didn't. That night, she said something that would have shattered me once. "I suppose I didn't realize how capable you were." I met her eyes. "You realized exactly what you needed to believe." She swallowed, said nothing. Acceptance doesn't always look like remorse. Sometimes it looks like retreat, and I was fine with that. The final family gathering, the one that closed the chapter for good, came unexpectedly. Aaron hosted a dinner for a potential investor, big, important, image-heavy, and somehow, despite months of distance, Jonah and I were invited. I knew why. Jonah's presence carried weight. Mine carried context. The investor arrived early, confident, perceptive. She spoke to everyone briefly, cataloging dynamics the way sharp people do. At some point, she turned to me. "You're Clara," she said. "I've heard about you." From Jonah, I assumed. But she continued. "Actually, from someone who lost a contract by underestimating you." Aaron's fork paused midair. I smiled politely. "That's unfortunate." She laughed. "For him, not for you." The rest of the evening unfolded with exquisite inevitability. Aaron tried to steer conversations, tried to reclaim authority, but the investor asked me questions, asked Jonah how we worked together, asked why people like us chose partners so deliberately. At the end of the night, as coats were gathered and goodbyes exchanged, the investor shook my hand. "You know what I respect most? You didn't demand space. You built something that required it." After she left, the house felt smaller. Aaron didn't look at me. My mother sat rigid, hands folded. No one spoke. Jonah squeezed my hand once, quiet confirmation. We didn't linger. Outside, the night air was cool and open. I breathed it in like a finished sentence. "You okay?" Jonah asked. "I'm done," I said, "with all of it." He nodded. "Good. There's nothing left to prove." As we drove away, I thought back to the pillar, the way it had loomed larger than it ever deserved to, the way I'd internalized its shadow, convinced myself it was my place. I understood now. They hadn't put me behind it because I was small. They put me there because they were afraid of what would happen if I wasn't hidden. And in the end, the stranger who took my hand hadn't saved me. He'd simply recognized me. I had done the rest. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need to be centered in rooms that once erased me. I had built a life so solid, so visible, that no pillar could block it. And that was the moment I knew I would never sit where I wasn't seen again.